Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this talk. If you don't mind, let us start with prayer. So the Lord and the presence of Blessed Father Marie-Eugène would just give us some help, both sides of the aisle. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Let us open our heart to His love. Lord, graciously give us your Holy Spirit. Give us your light, your discernment. Incline our will toward yours. Enkindle our heart with the fire of your Holy Spirit. We ask you this through the powerful intercession of Our Lady, who is always present among us. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, today's talk is on, first and foremost, on this book, John of the Cross, A Living Flame. By the way, A Living Flame is just the title of the book. It's not about the living flame, which is one of his works, John of the Cross. This book is by Blessed Father Marie-Eugène. It's a collection of some of his talks. You can still have this book. It's published, republished, reprinted by the Carmelites at Boars Hill. So I guess you can find it either, or you can order it through the website and so forth. I'm just saying it because I'm recording, so other persons maybe on the other side of the pond would like to have this book. So as I was saying, these chapters here are in fact a collection of talks that Father Marie-Eugène gave a little bit throughout the years. You have very early ones, like from 1927, but I think the majority, except maybe another one after the end of Second World War, 46, the others are 1960, which is very interesting because it shows it shows us what he thinks maybe 7-ish years before he dies. So he is now, of course, at the height of his experience, knowledge, wisdom, and so forth. So he is, I think he's 1890, he's born 1890, I wrote it down, 94. So 1960, he is 66 years old. So gives you an idea. So now, these talks are, the choice, I think, is made with one idea, which is to see which talks are following John of the Cross, because the coherence of this book is that what does Father Marie-Eugène say about John of the Cross? That's the idea of this book. So what does he say about John of the Cross, how he teaches John of the Cross? So we have, I would say, a prophet of the 20th century, him, talking about a great master, great prophet, St. John of the Cross, a few centuries back, in a Spanish one. So that's I would say, the interest of these talks and the idea of this book. Now, today's talk is on the chapter on the Purifications. You find it in this edition of the book at page 133 till just the top of the page 149. So 133 and to 149. It's not huge per se, quantity-wise, but I would say the topic here is the first Purifications, the first purification. Don't worry, I will try to situate everything, but just to give you the first glimpse on what it is. So the talk is given the 13th of March 1960. We don't know exactly to whom, but from what you can sense, he's probably talking to a mixed audience, probably. I would say lay people, but maybe certainly some members of Notre Dame de Vie, but also maybe consecrated people. So it's a bit of everything. Now, from the beginning, I want to tell you something, because despite, I would say, the subject in itself, first purifications, very common things, you find plenty of books. I'm quoting here John of the Cross, and I'm quoting Father Mary Eugene. Plenty of books talk about these things. But having one talk only on that subject, when you have a look at the second volume of his big opus, in English we still have 2 volumes, while in French we have only 1 volume that combines the 2, because in the beginning it was 2 volumes. So the second volume here, in this second volume, what he addresses in this chapter, the first purifications, take enormous space, roughly minimum 110 pages, and maximum, if you add some more chapters, 146 pages. So it's enormous, and he does that in one talk. So it's very challenging for him, I imagine, and for me, because I read the text. Trust me, it has been very challenging for me, despite the fact that I do teach John of the Cross on a weekly basis already from many years. But the way it's done, he covers the entire span of it, and he moves with great ease from one point to the other. And I'm here saying, oh, how can I explain this? I have to explain this one, but I have to explain that one, etc. So I will not follow the text here line by line, paragraph by paragraph. I will present the subject so you can relate to it. I'll try using what he's saying, but in a different order. I'm not departing from what he says, on the contrary, but I think you will relate better to the subject. Now, first and foremost, in order to start, I would like to yes, another point. Remember, these talks are done in an oral form. So he's talking. It is a recording, and the recording is then transcribed to a written form. They tried as much as possible to keep the oral form. Father Marie-Jeanne is a person who, of course, can write and write very well, but also he likes to communicate, and he never reads like sometimes you would find in France. In France you'd find a talk, the person would have the talk and would read the talk, etc. Father Marie-Jeanne would talk directly to the people in front of him. So, so remember that there is an oral form, a direct contact with the people, and sometimes it triggers things. You're not aware of it, but when you talk today about this subject, it's different if you talk about the same subject another day, depending on the people in front. Okay, so I just these first points I want you to know. Now, let me situate the first purifications. What does he call the first purifications? Of course, he's referring directly to St. John of the Cross. But the fact that we have his work, I Want to See God, and this second volume, I Am a Daughter of the Church, and of course we are rather in the second volume rather than the first volume, we need also to situate what he's saying in his teaching. Remember that I Want to See God and a Daughter of the Church, the English versions, for instance, comes out 1955 of this volume. It is published by the end of the 1940s and early 1950s, the 2 volumes in French, and then immediately translated in at least 3 or 4 languages. Now, the written form of the teaching, the strong form, the clear form, is of course in his writing. And it's good to remember to go back to what he says if you want to know a little bit more. Like you are intrigued by this or that statement, if you want to know more, you go to this thing. Now, going back then to the second point I wanted to explain, which is situating the journey. Remember that in his work and in the works of the masters of Carmelite spirituality, Teresa of Avila, St. John of the Cross, and St. Therese, the teaching presents the Christian journey as a journey of growth. You have a starting point, I will talk about this, and then you are aiming toward union with God. Today we would use, even then, you would use the word holiness and so forth. So really reaching the top of the mountain, if we think, for instance, about the ascent of Mount Carmel or other images. So that's the goal. The saints, the Carmelite saints, the Carmelite masters, when they write, their hope, their mission is to take us by hand and say, okay, let us go to the top of the mountain. But to climb the mountain, there are different stages, steps, difficulties, challenges, and so forth. So the teaching of the masters, of the Carmelite masters, and of course, obviously, Blessed Marie Eugene, is to show the journey. When he will structure his book, 2-volume book, I Want to See God and I'm a Daughter of the Church, he will just take the structure of the interior castle of Teresa of Avila. He will follow Teresa of Avila, but he won't follow only Teresa of Avila. He will take also John of the Cross, because Teresa of Avila doesn't cover everything, and John of the Cross the same. They complement each other. So please remember that. He works with 3 masters in the same time. Teresa of Avila gives him the main structure, even though he could have found it with John of the Cross. Then you have St. John of the Cross, and in these purifications, he leans more on John of the Cross. You will see that, and the proof of it is that this talk on the purifications falls into a book on John of the Cross, not on Teresa of Avila. Now, and of course, the third saint, the third master is St. Therese of the Child Jesus. From very early on, she's beatified and canonized in his time. He lived this moment of glory of St. Therese, but very early on he perceived how a great master she is, a new prophet for the modern times, St. Therese of the Child Jesus. And very early on he thought that she should be declared Doctor of the Church. But of course he didn't see that during his life on earth. He saw it from heaven, because she was declared Doctor of the Church in 1997, if I'm not wrong. So, by Pope John Paul II. So, as I said, he takes the structure of St. Teresa of Avila, but he needs, for instance, in the purification, especially the deep purifications, I will explain now, enter more into details, he will lean on, if needed, on St. John of the Cross. Especially this subject, he leans a lot on St. John of the Cross, and more so for these second purifications. These are the first purifications, the purification of the sense, I will explain, but then you have deeper ones. If you, just to make it easy for you, imagine the human being like a tree. In the tree, you have the visible part of the tree, the trunk, branches, leaves, fruits, and then you have the invisible part, which is the roots. Now, the first purifications, this is the human being, an image of the human being. The first purification is about the visible part of the tree. This is what you have more or less control, grasp, you can understand what is happening, and so forth. So that's the first purification, and John of the Cross calls them the purification of the sense, and not the senses. It's not a plural, it's one word, it's a singular word, and it describes the entire, I would say, sensual reality of the human being. Call it the lower part of, or our lower part, if you want, body, but also lower part of the soul, the sensual part. So it is the sense and not the senses. The translation, unfortunately, this is one of the rarest errors, puts senses. But in fact, every time you have to cross the S, the last S, it's the sense, okay? Just to be faithful to John of the Cross, but also to be faithful to Blessed Maria Eugene. Now, so the tree has the visible part, and the tree has the invisible part, the roots. And this will be then the next purification. This is why John of the Cross, and followed by Father Maria Eugene, I'm quoting him in this chapter we are working on, he says this is a superficial purification. It's a beginning of a purification, but the real purification comes after. It's very common, this one, the actual one, the sense one, no? The visible part, what can I do, etc. I will explain more. But the following one is tougher, deeper, and requires a lot of commitment and generosity. We'll see that. So less people will, I would say, go for it, to make it simple. Okay? So the first purification is about the sensual part, and you need to, what does it mean? What does it imply? Think of first the worst case, where you have a person really, really immersed in sin, grave sin, all sorts of sensual sins. Think of everything. You don't need any description for that. And of course, once we sin, we become enslaved to the senses, and we are rather led by, I would say, the lower half rather than the upper half. I'm trying to make it very simple, and we can relate to it. Remember, to make it even more simple, simpler with St. Paul. St. Paul says what? He says, I find a discrepancy in me. This is me translating. It's not. He doesn't use the word discrepancy. What I would like to do, what I know is right to do. You see, the mind with the light, the general light of faith. I don't do it. And what I don't want to do, I'm doing it, which means the lower part is controlling the upper part. Of course, since we are talking about the first purifications, I don't think, I don't know, but I think you might not relate directly to it. You will say, okay, I'm not into these things and so forth. But I think that we need to remember the remark Father Blessed Maria Eugene made when he published one of his first books, L'Oraison des Débutants, the contemplative prayer for beginners. So the publisher said, oh, what a title. Who will buy such book? I mean, beginners, who will consider himself as a beginner? He said, we are all beginners. That was his reply. We are all beginners. And remember, I think it's Gregory of Nyssa who says, we move from a beginning to another beginning. Conversion is every day. I start every day. Teresa of Avila says, let us start. Even after so many years, he says, let us start. So I think it doesn't harm to hear about a human being being enslaved with great addictions, great sins, and so forth. It never harms. Remember that Teresa of Avila, talking about the last stage of growth, which is the seventh mention, union with God, she brings us back to the first mentions and say, please do not forget your brothers and sisters who are in these prisons. Not physical prison, but the prison of sin. The Lord says, whoever commits a sin becomes enslaved to the sin. John of the Cross describes our state in this case. He says it's darkness. You don't have visibility because sin removes common sense, removes the clarity of the mind and so forth. So we are in it, we're not in it, we are half in it and half not in it. I think it's good, as Teresa of Avila says, to remember our brothers and sisters, if not ourselves, also our brothers and sisters who are in the midst of that. She said it's a great act of mercy to remember our brothers. She's talking to whom? To somebody who is already with union with God. So you see how charity links us together. It's not because I reach that level, in case you have, I don't know, that you forget the rest of the world. We are not saved alone. We are saved together. So it's not, even though the journey seems a bit of a lonely journey sometimes, but you are carrying, dragging behind you. This is what Teresa of Avila says. The devil here becomes very ferocious because he knows that if he loses this person, he is losing plenty of other persons. Why? Because this person will carry behind him or her plenty of others. Now, having said that, so the purification, this purification is, maybe I am not necessarily in a state of grave sin, but certain past sins, or anyway my state, where, as St. Paul says, the lower part is rather commanding the upper part. I need what John of the Cross calls the purification of the sense, not the senses, the sense, okay? So what will this purification do to me? This purification eventually, with my work, God's work and my work, will lead to a first liberation, where I'm not anymore enslaved by the lower half. That's an incredible feeling. You can read about, for instance, the union of will. It's not in this chapter. This is Teresa of Avila. You can read it either in Teresa of Avila 5th Mentions. There is a chapter on the union of will. Or you can read Father Marie Eugene, a beautiful and extensive description of it. Union of will. So union of will is not union, like the top of the mountain, but it's this first stage of liberation. Both of them would say that plenty of people, holy priests, holy lay people committed and so forth, would attain that level. It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. So this is the result of it. And strangely, in this chapter, he doesn't talk about it, while it's where we are heading. You see, this is one of the difficulties when you read a separate talk like this. You need to situate it, and that's why we are here today. I'm trying to help you situate things. Where are we exactly? So, now, another point, another very important point, which that doesn't really appear in a strong way in what he's saying, even though it's there. When you read and you know him a little bit, you know the saints, etc., you say, yeah, he's talking about it. But a normal reader maybe won't see it. It's what we may call the second conversion, or in the case of Teresa of Avila, her conversion. She's already a nun. She is already a nun for almost 20 years. So imagine that. She is a committed person. But the commitment, we will see, it's a sort of, there's a little bit of a limping here. She talks about God. She receives people in her cell, then that was possible, to talk about whom? About God and about contemplative prayer. Inside of these 20 years, the last 15 ones are, she's practicing on a daily basis contemplative prayer. So you think sometimes, well, contemplative prayer is the key. Well, no, it's not enough. It is necessary, but there is a need for something more. We will see that. So after so many years, she's not progressing. She's practicing, she's being available to God in contemplative prayer, which is very important. But strangely, the Lord cannot start to work in her. What is lacking? Her heart is divided. Her heart is divided. You can read what I would call today her confession in the first chapters of the book of her life. She doesn't say, dear reader, I am confessing now. No, but she is. She is. Why? She will tell you, she will tell us that her heart was divided. That affection, a normal affection, there is nothing sinful. Moral theology here will not complain. That's the point here. That moral theology won't find it. You need a microscope to find it. This is why you need spiritual theology. It goes even deeper. So she says, my heart was divided and I enjoyed the company of these friends who came to, male and female, lay people, religious, but lay people also, who came to visit her, and then she was, because they used to talk about spiritual life. You will say, but what's wrong with having friends talking about spiritual life? This is ideal. I dream about this. Why not having these friends? Yes, but the problem is not having the friend. The problem is her heart, her emotions, her affection is involved in these relations. Nothing sinful. Be careful. Don't travel with your mind. Nothing sinful there, I would say, moral theology-wise. But Jesus sees very well that her heart is not totally his. So he waits. 15 years, poor Jesus waits. She's a nun, she's fully dressed, she's abiding by the prayers, she does all what you have to do, but poor Jesus still have to wait. So it doesn't mean, oh, well, it's good to be a nun, don't get me wrong, I support that, but we can still be procrastinating. Not procrastinating what am I supposed to do, procrastinating to give my heart to the beloved, Jesus. Regardless of who we are. So I think this is a great lesson. And this is a turning point in the mind of Father Marie-Eugène. Because for him, as for Teresa of Avila, because he's her disciple, he's the disciple of all of them, he's learning from them, but also becomes a master and teaches us. He says that the beginning of the real Teresa of Avila starts with this second conversion. She's Christian, she's non. It's not about changing from, I don't know which religion to Christianity. No. It's coined usually in spiritual life, second conversion. Name it the way you want. I'm not fanatical about expressions, but this is how it is. So she says, and this is the beginning of the fourth mentions of her interior castle. So sometimes don't torture yourself too much with the first three mentions. They're good, but just start with the fourth, because this is where the juice is. But remember that crossing from the third to the fourth, you cross from a very, very ordered life, a good Catholic, a good committed Catholic, to the crazy Catholic, the one who is in love with Jesus. You laugh, but this is what she says in her book. She says that what differentiates she doesn't use the word good Catholic. This is me now, forgive me. So the good committed Catholic, the good parishioner, what differentiates the good parishioners from the crazy one, a crazy is used in the English meaning, not across the pond, because apparently when you say crazy in the United States, it means something else. So I'm using it here. She says what differentiates them is that love took this person out of reason. Sacar de razón. El amor no sacó de razón. So which means that love didn't bring me out of my senses, if you want. So to speak, of course. You don't become crazy, of course, but you forget yourself. You come out of yourself, and then you belong to Jesus. That's challenging. Huh? Remember, it took her 20 years, so don't worry. You still have time. Now, so this turning point is fundamental. And for Father Marie-Eugène, and this you can change second conversion and call it something else maybe you are more comfortable with, vocation or call, or Jesus call. No? Jesus is calling us. Doesn't mean that we have to leave everything and we become monks or nuns. No. The church acknowledges already from many years that very clearly that we are all called at a certain point. It doesn't mean that we are aware of the call, but we become aware of the call. And it is very subtle. It's not as Father Marie-Eugène, I'm quoting him, it's not the angel Gabriel coming and talking to you. No. He will talk about circumstances, also things of daily life. God is talking to us through sometimes secondary causes, not the first cause, the second cause, and he shows us, he guides us, and so forth. So, Jesus' call to holiness, call to follow him, not necessarily in religious life or consecrated life. This is what the second conversion also means. In the case of Teresa of Avila is the second conversion, but I would say for normal cases is rather the call. Father Eugene doesn't use the word call, but he's describing it full on. So when you go back and reread the text again, which I really recommend, you will sense that he's talking about a person searching. What am I supposed to do? What does God want from me? Etc. He says it doesn't show clearly. He doesn't show it clearly, but it's Jesus there who wants me. So let us go back to the first point. So when he will talk about the first purification, don't be surprised. It is placed technically for Teresa of Avila, for John of the Cross, right after the second conversion. What Teresa of Avila calls the fourth mentions, which is a climbing one. The odd numbers of the, this is Father Eugene transmitted from another Carmelite I knew. He told me, Father Bernard, he died, he called me, Father Eugene used to say the odd ones are plateau, and the even ones are effort and climbing. So when you read Teresa of Avila, just remember that.
But the first purification doesn't sound like a plateau.
No. This is why I say I remove what I said. It's fourth mentions, so it's effort. The first purification there is an effort.
Yeah, so that's an odd number.
Yeah, no, 4.
One.
4. It's
first purification.
No. Oh yeah, no. We are starting with the fourth ones. Yeah, and in the case of the fourth, then it would be. It's not.
Okay.
It's not.
Sorry. So I've missed. Just so I understand. So we're talking about the fourth purification, are we?
No, we are talking about the fourth mentions. The interior castle has 7 mentions.
Yeah.
The 7th one is union. Yeah. Entering the castle is through prayer and humility. Yeah. Then there is, in the second mentions, the effort to overcome sin and so forth and have an ordered life. Number 3 is a plateau. Right. Then you have this second conversion I'm talking about, the second conversion of Teresa of Avila, where, as I described, the love of God, we are touched by God, the love of God brings us out of ourselves, and then we start a new climbing moment. Okay? So
how did
no worries.
How do the purifications, first and second, fit into that framework?
The first purification we are talking about, this is John of the Cross classification, is the fourth mentions.
Okay.
So think third, then turning point, second conversion. You can write there. You can draw it. You can draw a horizontal line. So this is the third mentions in Teresa of Avila. Turning point, and then you are climbing. Fourth mentions. All the fourth mentions you are climbing. This is second conversion and first purification. The result of the first purification is the plateau. It's the union of will in the fifth mentions. Then prepare yourself. There is almost a vertical climbing. Okay, so is this a bit clear? Sorry, I know it's difficult to move from one system to the other because he combines both. Father Eugene combines John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila. So it's like what is what. So, but you did well. So the second purification corresponds a little bit to the 6 mentions, half of the 6, the upper half, if you will, of the 6 mentions of Teresa of Avila. Okay? Yeah. So first purification 4th, second purification 6th. But Teresa of Avila doesn't mention per se the second purifications. This is why Father Eugene, when he will address the second purification, it's a masterpiece. It's long, various chapters. I consider it as a modern masterpiece because it includes also reflections on psychology, the difficulties and challenges, mental health and so forth. It's a masterpiece, really a masterpiece, and takes various chapters. He takes it from John of the Cross essentially, not from Teresa of Avila, because Teresa of Avila, yes, there is one chapter in the six mentions where you can say, yes, she's talking about struggle. And this is very interesting because comparing 2 persons talking about the same subject, Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross, why one talks about hardships, difficulties, and Teresa of Avila is just one chapter and she goes on. This is the difference in perception. Two persons can be in the same struggle, but one perceives maybe more the struggle and the other one perceives something else. Yeah. So, or one is called to explain certain aspects and the other one is called to explain another aspect. So this is why I think indirectly, Blessed Maria Eugene is teaching us wisdom and flexibility and complementarity of approaches. And it's one of the characteristics of the Carmelite spirituality. You don't have a system of prayer. You pray this way, then you pray that way. When you read Teresa of Avila, it's like Jesus could be sitting on your side, could be at your side, could be inside of you. It could be flexibility is important. And I think that the approaches of John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila are complementary. So it would be too risky, I'm sure, in the mind of Father Maria Eugene to take only one and drop the rest. Oh, I like John of the Cross, but the rest I'm not interested. Yeah. You see? Anyway, so thank you for your question. Now, let us move on. Father Maria Eugene will have this observation. It's also taken from John of the Cross, and others made the same observations, contemporaries of Father Maria Eugene Carmelites, which is what? If a person, I know it's not our case, but if a person, I don't know, but I guess it's not, if a person commits in religious life, in consecrated life, enters in a convent or a monastery, and gives it all, very quickly, says Father Maria Eugene, God will start to change the way he operates. And it is almost visible. It is almost visible. If you check, if you visit, or you know enough, postulants and novices, especially if you are with the Carmelites, nuns and so forth, you will see that immediately. You enter with great fervor, which is, Father Maria Eugene says, no, in the beginning there is joy, he says. Even in marriage, he says, there is joy in the beginning. He says, if there is no joy, what would you do it? Why would you do it? And when we eat, there is joy, even, he says, I'm quoting him in this chapter, our chapter, even though the food can sort of makes you ill, but there is some joy in eating the food, okay? So he says, in the beginning there is joy, but then after that, the Lord intervenes. Now, what is the exterior frame? This person is called, so he or she crossed the turning point. But with this type of people, the consecrated people, it's much more visible or intense or almost palpable, the change. So you had the second conversion, the person is called, the person discerned the vocation, the person entered, the person is fully committed, very fervent. The person used to pray in a certain way, and then very rapidly, prayer becomes a struggle. Father Maria Eugene says, you need to persevere. This is a sign that God is intervening with the first drops or mouthfuls of contemplation. It is not the perfect contemplation of the later stages, but it's the first stage here. So here is the paradox. You had fervor, you had, say, to use a modern, very used expression, consolations and so forth. You're praying and so forth, and then suddenly you commit, you enter, you are very fervent, you are very obedient and so forth, and then suddenly the moments of prayer change completely. You don't have the taste, or quote unquote, the taste you had before, the enjoyment you had before. It's a little bit dull. When you read Therese, he doesn't quote her, but I'm quoting her, if you allow me. St. Therese of the Child Jesus. Now, when you read the first early letters when she enters in the monastery, remember she enters at the age of 15. She's very young. But still, this phenomenon happens. She said when you read the first letters to her sister Celine, when you want to know Therese, read her letters to Celine. Celine is a little bit like her twin sister, her mirror, if you want, her soul mate. So she says, Celine, if you knew how difficult it is, how it's a struggle for me. She has to grabs in her hands the rail, the staircase rail, in order not to go and see the prioress and talk to her and whatever. Prayer is really doesn't have any enjoyment whatsoever. And this is just the beginning of religious life, which is strange, no? Because you think religious life, well, you are in peace, you are fine, you have time, you enjoy, you pray, etc. No. But you think that you can interpret this like God is departing from me. God is upset with me. God is not giving me anymore this joy. I thought that consolation meant the presence of God. And John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, and Father Mary Eugene in this talk makes it very clear. He says, no. This is the beginning of the intervention, a new intervention of God. It's the beginning of an early form of contemplation. God is taking over. God is taking over. This is why he says God is leading. Entrust yourself to the Holy Spirit and let the Holy Spirit lead you. And he does a very unexpected inversion in his book. This was the same. No, this is the French, this is English. John of the Cross says the active night, which means our effort. Remember always, active in the language of John of the Cross and this chapter, because he's copying John of the Cross. Active means our effort. The active night means whatever we are supposed to do in order to be purified, to prepare ourselves, to make ourselves ready in the hands of God. Now, passive, what John of the Cross calls passive purification, it simply means God's intervention. It's as if God is replying to you, and he is indeed replying to your effort. Usually, St. John of the Cross puts our effort, of course, with the general help of the grace of God, and then God's reply. If you are a little bit familiar with John of the Cross, you want to know the active effort for the night of the saints, you can read Ascent of Mount Carmel, book 1. But now you want to know God's reply to you, God's reply. You read Dark Night, book 1. You see, they go together. This is what we do, this is what God does. You cannot disentangle them, you cannot separate them. It's a journey together. It's not one stage and then the other stage. Now I am in the active night and within a few months or within a few years I am in the passive night. No. You commit full time. You see, when they enter, just a few months, a few days sometimes, God changes the way he works. So it doesn't take time if you really commit. So it's about full commitment, giving my heart, giving my energy, and then letting God lead us. So the order is active and then passive. Father Mary Eugene, and this is just a parenthesis, it's not directly in the text, it's in the notes, and you need to go back to I'm a Daughter of the Church. He inverts the order. Surprise. I mean, even for me, being familiar with John of the Cross, he says no. God leads. So he puts the passive first. He studies the passive night first. You can read in French, Je veux voir Dieu, or I am a Daughter of the Church. You will see he puts first the passive night and then the active night. It's like, why do you do that? I think, I'm almost convinced that he's doing this, and he says it even in our text today. He says because God is taking over. God is the one who is leading us, and you need to continue and persevere. So in front of these first arid, challenging, dry, no consolations moment in this new change, he says you have to persevere. Don't drop. You have a sacramental life, keep receiving it, keep going for the Mass, keep receiving communion, keep doing it. Resist in faith, would say St. Peter in his letter, no? So do not just surrender because you have the impression that God dropped it, or God is not interested in you anymore. No, he says continue. So you have joy in the beginning, Then, through this commitment, you have this moment of change, and he says continue. And it is during this moment that the purification starts to take place. And who is, I would say, who is the one who really accomplishes it? It's God's grace. As we said, God has the priority, God is leading. So yes, I am supposed to do certain things. I need to use the word he uses. I think it's a bit less used today, mortification. Mortification means to refrain from the sensual use of different things, food, pleasure, and so forth. So mortification comes from more in French or in Latin, which means death, but it's not about death, it's about controlling, you would say a bit of asceticism or self-control and so forth. But then God's grace replies, and this is what matters. The one who will free me, who will make the upper part of my being more in control with the lower part, is the grace of God. The author of the liberation is God. But it's a collaboration where God has the upper hand, but still I have to be there for him. I'm summarizing pages, especially in I Am a Daughter of the Church, pages and pages, just putting them in a few sentences. Okay? So now, he says that in this time of purifications, there are two phases. An initial phase which is more difficult than the second one. Then it eases. So perseverance is important. Okay? Now, I'm sure this advice, even though we might not necessarily be in this phase, we might be a little bit further or a little bit before, I think that it always sheds light on how God works, the relationship between what we do, what he does, the journey itself, the stages, and so forth. Now, when you read his book, when you read the chapter, I mean, from the beginning, he starts, you see, I'm talking about beginning now. I had to prepare you in order to start reading the chapter. Father Marie-Eugène starts with explaining to his audience that there are three different lives. The life of the sense or the body, if you want. The intellectual life, reason, mind, endeavors, and so forth. And these are, I would say, quote unquote, natural lives. And then he says there is a third layer, as the third level, which is the supernatural life, God's life in us, our spiritual life. And he adds, when he explains this, he says, yes, we have the first life, second life, but now you know they can have the upper hand. No, if I am immersed in a sensual behavior and so forth, I'm a bit slave of this or that addiction and so forth. So it's like I'm in a prison. I can also have pursuits in life, nothing bad. There are people who, dedicate their life to run companies or just accumulate money or and so forth, or science, knowledge. Per se, it's nothing bad, but when it becomes an obsessive thing which sort of destroys all the rest, it's damaging instead of helping. Not only that, but where is the third level, which is the spiritual life? And Father Marie-Eugène, this is just the beginning, the first paragraphs of the chapter. He says, it's the third level that tells us where we are going. It's our spiritual life, which is a little bit our compass. I'm using the image of compass, not him. So the direction, we get it from the third level. And he says the third level needs to, he uses the verb to dominate. The translation is correct. The French is to dominer. Today, I'm not sure if we will use dominer, like control, etc. It looks a little bit too I would say, will-powered word, but try to understand what he's trying to say. When he uses this word, of course, you need to place the expression he's using so many years back and so forth in his context. But he explains it. He says, I don't mean to cancel the other two lives, the physical life and the intellectual life, or a mind, or rational life. He said, it's not about canceling them or frustrating them, but it's about the life of God who needs to penetrate these other two levels. So the spiritual life, the grace of God, I'm quoting him, so you will find the exact same thing. Now he says, the grace of God, the action of God needs to penetrate, enter deep, in these two levels. And of course, since we are talking about purification of the sense, the first stage is God operates in general, of course, from the outer area to the inner area. So he starts with the purification of the sense, and then he will move on to the deeper purification. Okay, so now another point is a person, and here is a little bit the how he moves from one thing to the other, and he talks a little bit about what we would call today the vocation. I'm called, or I don't know what I'm supposed to do, where I'm supposed to go, etc. He says there is a light. God's light is guiding us. You need to remember that. He says, as I said earlier on, you don't expect a powerful inspiration or the angel Gabriel who comes to you and says you need to do this and that. He says sometimes it's a friend who will say something to you, and this will be God using these secondary causes in order to guide you. And he takes the example of St. Teresa of Avila's friend, Juana Suarez, who Teresa of Avila entered the monastery, that monastery, because she had a friend there. Today, of course, you would never say that you have the vocation or to that place, etc., because you have a friend there. It's not enough. You need to have a little bit more. No. So the motivation here is very light, I would say. But you see, this is what God used. He used very small indications, small things that either stopped us on our journey or, on the contrary, opened the way or suggested a direction, and we took it. So he says, God is guiding us, and I think that when he explains these things, it's a little bit after the turning point of the second conversion. It could be also a little bit before. And he says that before also there is an effort that we should produce. When he talks about this asceticism, this effort of ours, he says there are two stages of asceticism. He says there is one in the third mansions, which is before the second conversion, and there is one after the second conversion. It is very interesting. This is typical of Father Marie Eugene. It's his deep penetration of spiritual life and understanding of it. Okay, so am I supposed to rather stop, more or less, now?
Yes, or we can have maybe 5 more minutes.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Okay, I'm more or less there. So of course there is plenty more. Now, one final point maybe is, and you find this toward the end, about almost the final paragraph or the one before. It says, is it good to know where we are on this journey? Now, we talked about the journey. We talked about, you asked me the question, where is the first purification? Where is the first one? Where is the first mentions? I'm completely lost, etc. Don't worry. We are all lost when we start these things because it's very obscure. So, is it good to know? Now here you have Father Marie Eugene's answer. I know he's not from Normandy, but he still has a very Normand, what we call in French, une réponse normande, a Normand answer, which is yes and no. He says, peut-être bank oui, peut-être bank no. So he says, yes, it's useful to know where you are. Why? Because you will understand what is happening, and therefore your response will be better. When he says it's useful to know it, he says you might sometimes be able to know it by yourself, by reading and checking. Also, you can have a good spiritual director who would be able to discern. But what is interesting here is that he will add this other side of the answer, no? He will say, but not too much introspection and analysis. Don't over-analyze it. Leave a little bit of shady area. So that's funny, no? On one hand, he says yes. The answer is very clear. He says yes. Yes, it's good to know where you are, but don't over-analyze it. Because, you know, there are people who would say, okay, well, am I really here, exactly here? Or am I a little bit it's like two feet after, or 2 inches before, you see? He said, yes, it's good to know because your response you will have light to know what God is doing. Like, for instance, the example I gave, no? When you enter, you are full of fervor, and then a few months after, this fervor is gone. When you commit full power to spiritual life, it's amazing. It's joy, no? Joy, like when you start a love story, no? It's beautiful. Or when you start a good meal, no? A lovely meal. Oh, that was amazing and enjoyable. But after that, digestion, difficult. You see? So it's good the beginning, but then when you know, this is what he says, no? When you know that it is normal, that there is a change, and it doesn't mean that God left you and it's gone, or you are doing something wrong, or you went astray. And he says, persevere. That's important, because otherwise you will not persevere. And this is why, and I'm closing here, John of the Cross starts writing, and Father Mary Jane quotes him here. He starts writing John of the Cross. You can read the prologue of the Ascent of Mount Carmel, and you'll find more or less what I'm saying right now. He says, he's talking from the perspective of a spiritual director. So you sense how many persons he already met which fall in the case he's about to describe. He says, I knew people where God changed the way he's acting, but the spiritual director they had told them to go through a general confession, because there must be something wrong with them. Why is God stopping change his behavior? There must be something wrong with them. You see? And he says, it's not my mission, it's not my, I don't have this talent of a writer. John of the Cross, he says that, so poor us. He says, I don't have a talent of a writer, it's not my mission, and so forth. Of course, he's a monk. He says, but out of compassion, I will sit down and write, because that's not right. To have people who are growing and think that, on the contrary, they are going backward. So out of compassion, I will write to help them, because you are progressing. If you are continuing with your initial commitment and you find that the way you pray changed, that it's more dry, it's more challenging, he says, continue. Don't hesitate. Continue. You are okay. This is God's intervention. Thank you. There is plenty more, but I'll leave you to read it. Don't ever think that I told you anything about today's chapter. You still have to read it. But I hope you will enjoy reading it, and I will have a little bit your better bearings. Thank you. Thank you. So, yes, yes, tell me.
So you started quite early on. You talked about Teresa about a second conversion, and that entailed sort of shedding her outside friends and that's that part of her life, and then later on you talked about these three parts of our life: the senses, intellectual and spiritual. And so just sort of bringing those two together, or the challenge of it. So I can see Teresa of Avila, who's leading a religious life. So having the third dominate the other two, clearly the senses you sort of get rid of a lot anyway in religious life, if you're contemplative. The intellectual you can very easily, you naturally order to your spiritual pursuit. So that seems fairly straightforward. For those of us that live in the day-to-day, naturally a lot of our life is going to revolve around the sense and the intellectual, because that's what we do in everyday life. So what does good look like for the spiritual to dominate the other two if you're living a very normal life like us? And you alluded to it at the end about whether you could know, and I suppose the other thing is how could you know, and you then sort of implied a spiritual director. But is there any way, so I can know that I'm not there, right? That's easy, but what will good look like when I know that if I do get there?
Yeah. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to just clarify in case I misunderstood what you said. I don't know if we can put it this way, like for Teresa of Avila, that she had to get rid of the relationships or the whatever. I think it's rather. Say again?
I presume it's the need for them. It doesn't.
Yes, it's inside. Yeah. As St. John of the Cross says, detachment is essential, but he adds saying detachment is in the will. So, for instance, one can have possessions, one can have interaction, one can have this and that, but it's about my attachment to it, to which extent is my life in the hands of God, is what I'm doing in the hands of God, and repeating this offering. I think this is what helps us to create the difference in our life. Remember this very strange, to a certain extent, advice that St. Paul gives. I forgot now which letter. He says, you who live as if you're married, you who are married, live as if you are not married. You who possess, live as if you don't possess. I want you to be free of worry. I would almost, if John of the Cross was to say again this advice, I think he would say, I want you to be free of worry, I want you to be detached. But it doesn't mean I want you to leave all this. So how can we exactly...
how can you love your wife and be detached from her? What does that mean?
How can you love your wife, your children, your neighbor, your colleagues without... having had a little bit of the experience of religious life, sometimes people imagine that it's really two different worlds. I beg to differ, even though I won't be able to convince you. Let me give you an example. And I think Father Maria Eugene mentions it, but rather in I Am the Daughter of the Church, rather in his text. And I think it will help. He goes back to Teresa of Avila's advice given in Way of Perfection. Way of Perfection is a genius book. In my humble view, it is the masterpiece, despite the fact that everybody thinks that it's the interior castle. I think the real masterpiece is, at least for formation, it's known in Carmel. It's Way of Perfection. Way of Perfection. The initial request from the nuns to write it was. Tell us about contemplation. Now it's right after the first foundation. So she created a new monastery with stricter enclosure. So you have less interaction with the outer world. And then they say, so I want to show you to which extent we are both human beings and we both struggle the same and we both have a little bit the same challenges. So you said, how can I love my wife? How can I love my brother, or if I am a monk, or my sister, and so forth? You will see there is something, and it's the core of the gospel, because Jesus said, if you do not prefer me above your wife, your children, etc., well then it won't work. So how can we reach that point? So Teresa of Avila said,
What does it look like?
yeah, but first to see what to do, and then the result, that's the liberation, freedom, we'll see. So the nuns say, okay, now we are enclosed, now we don't have contact with the outer world, so that's easier, you will say for them. Tell us a little bit about contemplation. She starts to write the book. She says, okay, I will tell you about contemplation. Or for almost half of the book, she doesn't mention the contemplation, not even once. She says, I'm laying the pieces, like when you play chess, and she will, in the first draft of her Way of Perfection, she will mention that, but then she will remove it in the final draft before publication. Sadly, because the example is beautiful. I don't know if you are familiar with chess, but in chess you have the opponent, the king of the opponent, and you have to encircle the king of the opponent, and then you say check, and then if the king cannot move, well then you got the king, checkmate, he died, you got him, and that's it, you win. So she played chess when she was young, but she didn't want her nuns to play chess in the monastery. So, but it's beautiful because she says, if you know how to place your pieces, you'll be able to win. And what does win mean in her mind? It means to get contemplation. It means to sort of, and bear with me, corner Jesus to the point that he surrenders and gives you his love. That's the key. For everybody, inside, outside. Now, she said, okay, I'm teaching you how to lay your pieces in the first part of the book. So then you become, she's enabling us, she's empowering us to do that, to corner the king, and the king is Jesus, and what we want is his love. Contemplation is to receive Jesus' love. So, she doesn't have the gospel access because of her time, the Protestant Reformation, Inquisition, removing the Spanish Bible, the Bible in Spanish language, removed from the market, etc. Only the Latin version, so only theologians would read that. But she will give us the core of the gospel in the practice of three virtues: humility, detachment, and love. And by love is love one another. So you are in the monastery and you need to love each other. You don't have enemies, she says, but still, I will show you something, she says. So I will take one of her examples to show you a little bit where she's leading us. So she says, we do, as spiritual people, as Christians if you prefer, we do practice detachment, humility, and love. But she says, I don't want any practice, I want a perfect practice. Hence the title of the book, Way of Perfection. Perfection alludes to the way I will practice the virtue, then I will trigger contemplation, so to speak. The king will fall for me, you see, will surrender. Beautiful. So let us take one of her examples, which is love of each other. So it's a love in the monastery. She says, of course you don't have enemies, but still there is a love and a love. She says there is a love where your preference interferes, where you self interfere, in the sense that you like to sit down with the person you like most. So you will sit beside this sister, or if you are a monk, beside that one. You will talk more easily with this one and not with that one. But the challenge is to sit down beside the one who annoys you, whom you can't bear. And trust me, it's normal. If you have 20 people in front of you, friends, you'll have two. So I prefer to go and talk to these other two on the other end of the spectrum. And the rest is in the middle. So this is love. An imperfect love, spiritual but imperfect. And the other one is a spiritual but perfect. And she pushes us for detachment. She says even health. We are very much attached to our health. To the point, she's talking to nuns, she's not talking to us. She said health. We are very much attached to our health. We worry for our health. Well, who doesn't worry for his own health? No? But she says, no, we are here to fight. We are here to fight. We are here to give it all. Don't care about your health. Just go for it. Of course, it's shocking for us as such language, because, okay, reasonable care for your body is okay. So you see, she pushes from a spiritual not imperfect love to a spiritual love. Now, if we practice this, she says, well then, the Lord surrenders. The Lord gives himself to us. So this is one aspect of the story, but it's not the only aspect. Remember that she takes for granted that there is a daily practice of contemplative prayer, which is also part of the commitment. It's not the key, but it's important. It's so this, with that, allows God to intervene and to transform us. Now, you say, how can I love? What was the question? How can I implement this love at home?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
What does it look like, me putting
Yeah.
God in front of Maria?
Yeah.
I know the theory.
Yeah. The practice is, well, that I'm not quoting anybody, I'm just trying to answer your question. You see God's will through her. Sometimes it's easy, but sometimes it's tiring, because I'm not talking about Maria, of course, I'm talking about in general. You'll have challenging moments. And this is where the Lord is waiting for us. There are moments where, to make it very simple, going back to the example of Teresa, there is a love where we are moved by our emotions rather than Him, for His sake. So the point of reference is Him. Does He want me to do this? Do I see Him there in the context, or yes or no? And sometimes, yeah, I have to make the extra effort to go for the extra mile. Anybody, it can be at home, can be friends, can be colleagues, can be a group or community or whatever. So that's the thing. Now, in the beginning it's difficult, this practice. And this is me talking, of course, describing the... So in the beginning it's challenging, it's difficult, no? Saint Teresa of the Child Jesus knew that, and she always chose to sit down beside a nun whom she couldn't bear. And to the point that after a long time, this nun one day told her, "What do you like in me?" And Therese says, I didn't tell her, I told her that I like her soul, but I didn't tell her that was it, no, the rest, no. So it's a good exercise to go for the challenging part of, for the sake of, no, if you are talking about charity, to go for the challenging part of it, you see? Don't fear the challenging part of it. And often Christ is waiting for us at the challenging part. We would like to escape from it, but I think that the art above and throughout all this is what? Is to see Jesus. Because if you do it just abiding with a rule, even if it's gospel, a rule is different than Jesus. And Father Mary-Jane says it en passant, and that's very quickly, he mentions Jesus, but that's the key. If I don't see Jesus, discern, if you prefer, Jesus there, that He is asking me this, well then, I can throw the bin, she can throw the bin. But I know she's tired, but leave all this. Where Jesus, what is He asking me? I'm tired also, you see. It's tiring. So what am I supposed to do here? It's little. But these are some examples, but I think there is much more than that. Now, what will happen if you say, okay, how will it feel? You will see that the more you exercise yourself, the more we exercise ourselves in that, the more you sense that emotions are not leading you in your choices. You will see that your mind is freer and decides what is right instead of unconsciously being a little bit led toward what I like, or old choices, or comfortable choices, or cultural, social choices, etc. You see? So you are asking, what does it feel? It feels a new freedom. It's challenging. It's tough. But then, as I said, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and don't ever fear by saying to Jesus, I can't do it. I can't do it. I know that you're waiting for me here. No? I know that this is you waiting for me, but I know that I can't. But please give me your Holy Spirit. So you see, this is an interaction. But of course, I'm not quoting them, but I think that's implicit in all any page we open. What I'm saying is implicit in the sense that if Jesus is not at the core of the story, what's the point? We're not applying rules. We are interacting with Him and receiving the Holy Spirit. So what is the difference? We will find that we are freer. And strangely, allow me, we will be drawing closer to Jesus Himself. So paradoxically, people around us will feel that we have a secret. There is somebody in our life. Some people can get jealous. Yeah, because they start to see that there is somebody who has the upper hand, who comes first. So you see, you become more of almost, I would say, a sacred area for Jesus. Yourself, ourselves, become more of that. And the paradox is here that you will serve them, and you will serve them better, but in the same time, your heart is not in their hands, it's in His hands. So that's the paradox. You'll be more available, humbler, more open, more a quick answer, I'm here, etc. But it's for Him, because you see Him. Yes, it's not schizophrenic, it's like they don't exist. You love them also, but He is loving them through you. He teaches us how to love, if you will. So, as a result, what is happening? Paradoxically, I am almost like inhabited by a new mystery, by this relationship. Paradoxically, I am more apt to serve, be humble, and accept things silently, but because of Him, because I belong to Him. This is only one little example. I can't really. Sorry, I took some time to explain it, but because I think we need practical. How does it? As is exactly your question. No? How does it look? It's beautiful theories. We know them, but how does it look? And that's the gospel. When you think about it, it's just the gospel. What does He say? He said, if you don't prefer me over your daughter, does it mean that I have to hate my daughter? Of course not. But between my daughter and Jesus, or if you prefer, what is right according to Jesus and what is right according to my daughter, at certain moments I will go what is right according to, even though I might lose something of the emotional aspect or the attachment with her or him, but in the end she will come back. So in a way we might lose a little bit people horizontally, but we are gaining them from above, and then later on they will see that we love them really, even better than before. So the emotional love moves on to a really more spiritual love. I hope I express myself.
But aren't there examples in history of, I'm trying to remember who it was, a saint, and she and her husband both had a kind of conversion experience, so they were both in love with you, and they remained together, but it depends whether your wife is, it's to do with whether she's as interested as you.
No, well, she is unlucky, so in that regard, it's not a conflict.
But often it's not the case. How many persons, one is with Christ and the other one is not yet. And St. Paul even, sorry, did you want to say something? I can comment on that, but did you want to say something more?
Sometimes it's easier if the person's not at all interested, because then...
Oh, really?
It's like, you love golf, your partner doesn't.
Yeah, it's your business.
They're not bothered.
Yeah.
I think it would be, personally, I think it's a huge blessing that I'm married to someone who thinks the same way, because then, I think in the end, for me, it's not in conflict, actually, so I can overanalyze it. Whereas I think if you're married to someone who doesn't think the same way, then you're more likely it becomes a conflict, and that could be challenging.
It is very common, by the way. I'm talking from my just small experience. It is very common in couples, in families, to have one member who is really very fervent and the other one is, at least in appearances, are very, very far from at least a real material commitment. St. Paul himself says something very interesting. At a certain point, he had a couple, they were married, pagans, so forgive the expression, non-Christians, and then she becomes Christian, and then presents the case to St. Paul and says, well, what am I supposed to do now? Do I have to stay now that I became Christian, but he's not? Do I separate from him? Yes or no? Technically, according to the understanding of the church, yes, you have the right to separate. But still, St. Paul says, it's better if you stay. You don't know what part you will play in his salvation. So many persons, one is very much with Christ, with spiritual life and so forth, the other one much less, in different grades, of course. But I think that this is a deep mystery. Jesus waited for you, then he found you and you found him. So his patience, he repaid his patience by being patient with your husband or your wife or your children, God knows, your children today. Be patient also, and remember that you are playing an important role for their conversion.
I think the challenge in your analogy of golf, you know, you can go and say, no, but it's interesting. Yeah. The challenge with that analogy is that you're then, it is causing you to have to separate. So, okay, I'm going to go and do my faith bit, and at home I'm going to be someone else. And of course that's
Why someone else?
Well, because only because you use the analogy of you go and play golf. You know, one plays golf and the other doesn't. But you want to be fully yourself at home. And if you're married to someone who doesn't share that faith, that is just harder. That's all. I think.
But if you're there's the other alternative, like Dante and Beatrice, where the woman he loves this woman and she inspires him. You know, so in the case of, you know, if you really love your wife, you could actually turn it around.
Oh no, that's the beautiful journey. That's what I think you're saying, is that, you know, you're involved in the salvation of your.
Yeah. I think this is important. Not only that, and I think that there is forgive me the expression, a mystical dimension to that. In which sense? Like, imagine I'm very committed, I'm very full on, and imagine my wife is not at all. Christian faith is not her thing at all, etc. Jesus doesn't mean anything for her. So now I'm struggling because I love her. We don't want to separate. She respects me. I respect her. But still, my relationship with Jesus gives me a great pain, because I would like her to have the same thing that I'm having. Now, what I'm getting to is this. I'm living a mystery. I'm living not only the mystery of my wife in this case. It's not my case, thank God, but it could be. It could have been. I'm living a mystery, which is a mystery of salvation, because now she represents all the people. Not only herself, but she is a little bit the image of all the other people who are far from God. So it's in a way Jesus telling me, don't forget your brothers and sisters through your wife or through your husband. Don't forget all the people who are like her, or she represents, or he represents. So I think that it's important to understand that we have a mission, we play a role in the salvation of our brothers and sisters. Jesus is not just something that I embrace. The more Jesus' love grows in me, the more it burns and the more it aches. Teresa of Avila in the fifth mention talks about grinding pain. It's grinding pain, she talks. Muele las entrañas. It's grinding the how do you say entrañas? Yeah. You see? She says there is a new pain. She says this is the result of growth. So this pain, I think, it's a new stage in our mission or our call to not to just, yes, to draw closer to Jesus, yes, I'm happy, etc. No, you can't be happy if your brothers and sisters are far from Christ. That's not bearable. It doesn't fit in the mind. So the more we grow, the more paradoxically this pain and this I would say, mystery of people who are still very far from Jesus become part of our life, and we shouldn't neglect that side. What I'm getting at is this, that it's not, yes, oh, how sad it's my case that my wife or my husband are not there. No, it's a sign that God is putting in my life, in marriage, in my life, so it's serious, but it's something tragic, because Jesus, when he saves, all of us, each one of us is a little bit like his bride, no, so to speak. So this is the mystery, that I am married, he is married, but where is his wife? You see, part of his wife is not there yet. So I enter, as St. Paul puts it, in the bigger mystery of Jesus' marriage. St. Paul says, human marriage, Christian marriage is great, but it's great because of that greater mystery. So you are introduced deeper into Jesus, understanding Jesus' pain and Jesus' thirst for the others. So I think that despite the struggle, the pain, you live it in a different way when you start to understand that it has a meaning, that it has a mystical meaning. Mystical, it's real. Mystical is not in the air. It's real. That this person reminds me constantly of Jesus' case, of Jesus' problem. Where is his bride? You see, there are plenty of people he died for, and they are not there yet. They are very far. But something depends on me. So then it's flipped completely. It is lived in a different way. You see what I'm trying to say? The pain is there, but the pain reminds me of Jesus' pain. And then I live my day, I think, in a different way. Sorry.
I just feel that it's a mystery of God that he hasn't, say if your wife isn't, or the wife isn't interested. It's a mystery of God that he hasn't come to, that she hasn't woken up. But the more you get into Jesus, the more light, and the less one is bothered about this and that. Because in the end, it's on one level, I'm stupid, but I think it's a distraction. I think if one really just focuses on Jesus, then the wife who is not, it might, by sheer light in your eyes, and that you're not leaving her out.
Yes.
I think it's interesting because a friend of ours who's got a very deep faith, and he's not married, but he's got hundreds of sort of nephews and nieces and all the rest. And he absolutely lives what you talk about. He has this real pain because they're all Catholic by birth, but lots of them have sort of left the church or aren't active. And he goes through agony about their salvation. He really worries about it, and I think that's the pain that that I can see. If the people you love the most, and children are the classic, because you love them and you just worry, right? You
Absolutely.
worry.
Children, grandchildren, yeah. But I think it's important to understand that the more the love of Jesus grows, mysteriously this new pain that you don't know from where it comes. I remember this expression of Saint Teresa of Avila, no, fifth mentions, no, it's like grinding pain. It's you don't know from where it comes. It's the result of God's presence and God's growth in us. I think you want us to close, yeah.
Thank you. Maybe we can finish with a prayer that you can read, Jean.
Yeah.
And there is, if you want, you can entrust your prayers as well and all the situations we've been talking about to Father Marie-Eugène. There is a small relic. I think it's a piece of his bone here. So you can venerate it. You can take it in your hand and pray.
Yeah, ex ossibus, yeah. It's bone.
As you wish. Thank you. Jean, do you want to read the...
Yeah. Well, let us... We were talking about very deep issues, but real issues, and the more it goes with our world, our Western civilization, the more it is becoming more acute. So let us entrust God, entrust Jesus, entrust Our Lady, ourselves, our families, our countries, and the future of our children and grandchildren. Let us pray for the church, for all the people who are far from God, far from Jesus, who don't know Jesus. And let us also very humbly commit without fearing any obstacles or difficulties in our heart, in our life, but still let us say yes to the Lord, renew our yes to the Lord very humbly. Let us entrust our yes to Our Lady. She is the one who said yes. She is the one who softens our heart, makes our heart more humane. So Mary, take our hearts and our commitment. We renew our commitment in your hands, and so this time of Lent can be even more fervent. Let us say together, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy will come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Thank you very much.